Ryan, we are able to talk about this film,
Yeah.
but it does not come out. But it does not come out until July 9th. But we'll be back in theaters.
Yes.
If we want to be, or we can watch this film from the privacy of our own home for an extra $30 on Disney Plus.
Don't do it.
Well, we'll discuss your reasoning for that later.
No. Well, no. Look. Okay. Yeah. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. No, we might agree. Let's do that. If I'm going to see this movie,
absolutely,
I'm going to see it in the theater.
100%. In fact, I would have preferred to have been able to see it in IMAX.
Yes, I was shocked when we got there that we were not in the IMAX theater, which even the studio rep said, ask Disney.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they were thinking. The movie, of course, is Black Widow. The oft asked for and oft delayed Scarlett Johansson helmed Marvel cinematic entry from phase 3.5, which is where I'm just going to lump all of the TV shows and Black Widow at this point. Takes place immediately following Civil War.
Yeah.
But before Infinity War. And yeah, we finally get our solo Black Widow film. Directed by a lady that I was not familiar with, by the way, named Cate Shortland, who I was not familiar with because she's done a couple of TV shows and 2 movies that I hadn't heard of. But she got the nod to helm Black Widow. Ryan, what are your first initial thoughts on Black Widow?
My initial thoughts. Well, I think obviously we wanted this film years ago. And I think it's kind of a hard film. I mean, the Marvel franchise, it's probably the strangest entry in the timeline, in the sense that, it's not the first time we've gone backwards.
Right. Captain Marvel.
But I guess we need to acknowledge, and I'm sorry if this is a spoiler for anyone who hasn't watched, but this character is no longer with us.
Yes.
And so in a way, when you watch this film out of order, it's very hard not to see it as a swan song to the character.
Yes.
And as far as that goes, I don't think it's quite what I wanted. But if you step back and realize where the majority of this film takes place, the actual swan song for the character is in another movie, and I actually quite like that moment. So you kind of have to go meta here a little bit and think, okay, how would I felt about this story had it been told in the place where apparently it's supposed to have been told?
In the place it fell.
Yes.
If we'd had Civil War and then...
Yes, and then this.
And then this.
How much better would I receive it? I think I would have received it a little bit better. But I also think that there is a burden that is put on something like a film like this, when it is told out of order.
Yes.
And yet it has to line up with whatever has already been established. And so you have to figure out, how are we going to balance telling our story and then connecting it to what comes next? Whereas that's much easier if you just tell the story and then the next film has to react to what you did, or you've gotten far more sense of freedom to work within. And I think the film does a reasonable job of not being too tied to what comes next, but it still is. It can't escape the fact that A plus B needs to equal C, because that equation's already been established.
This is the variable that we've technically already solved for.
Yes. So I mean, it's not the movie I would have made. Not. Although, with that said, it features a lot of the things that I would have put in the movie I would make, thematically, and some of the it's some of the delivery. I don't think I think this would have been a better film if it wasn't so big and bombastic. If it had just allowed the character stories to, happen, rather than making it the. I don't think everything needs to be about the end of the world.
No.
For me, the film that I wanted out of this was about whether or not, the character themselves survives.
Right.
Not the world, but literally the character themselves as they navigate kind of through this tricky. Because this is kind of the film that's about Natasha living with her past and becoming the person that we see in the next couple of films.
Right.
So yeah, I think generally speaking, I think they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with any of that. For me, one of the comments I made was that this Black Widow it has a different feel than most of the other Marvel movies. It's a lot. It feels like a rougher film, if that word makes sense to you. It just feels not professionally done. Not, it's not some low budget indie rough.
No.
It's got a kind of grittier taste to it for a lot of it, not all the way through.
I mean, I would say to an extent, yes, but it's still very much a polished film.
Yes.
I think that they could have, again, I think that it could have been rougher. And then there's part of me that wishes it was rougher.
Because that whole opening sequence is what, that they back off of that tone.
Yes.
But not all the way. It doesn't go all the way to,
yeah, but they do
a lot of the other Marvel films.
So we should point out. So the early part of this film is we get to see Natasha's childhood, or a sliver,
right.
One event, and then kind of a montage of things that follow. And I think the film rides the emotion created by those scenes basically for the rest of its duration. Almost everything emotional is based on the first 30 minutes, and kind of just carries over.
Yeah, but I like the way that part, what even was shot and whatnot. I kind of wish that had been more of the run of the film.
Yes. And again, what I would say is I think that's because it was literally about family, or the lack thereof, or however, whereas towards this is a kind of a strange film in that the bad guy, the villain, almost feels like he doesn't matter for 75% of the movie, maybe. He
doesn't really matter for like 95% of the movie.
Anyway, and then suddenly he matters, and that's fine.
But he only, it's people are going to go, oh yeah, Marvel couldn't have a good villain again. But his existence in this film is really not even secondary; it's tertiary. To what's going on.
Yes, because the heart of the film, and this is again going back to why we don't have to save the world. We can just
save the family. Yeah,
save the family. Anyway, and that's the primary story. And so for the bulk of the film, that's exactly what it is. But then I think there's this need, and I don't know if this was mandated. I don't know if this was just they had this in their head all along of this is where we have to get to, because if we don't tell this story now, when are we going to get to tell it? But it again, if you go smaller, the smaller aspects of the film is what's really, really quite good. Mm-hmm. It's when you then go, oh wait, we're a Marvel movie,
right?
That it gets a little too comic booky, which is I know It is a comic
Comic
book.
book movie. Yeah,
So
it is a comic book movie.
I acknowledge that, that's kind of I guess in a way, a strange take, but I think we're kind of in.
But like even the Winter Soldier, still
Sure.
the best Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Never goes all the way comic book. Even at the
No.
end,
No,
it's never. So Black Widow even goes more comic book than that. And if it had
Yes.
throttled that back a little bit, then yeah, totally, you're looking at something that is a lot more Winter Soldier than a couple of movies I'm going to mention later.
Well, and I think, for me, what I would have liked is a film that was sort of a Winter Soldier feel, but that was as emotionally involving as, say, Logan.
Right.
If we could find somewhere where, I mean, I love Logan. I think, but Logan, to a certain extent, is not a comic book film. It's kind of a Western, or it's kind of a lot of other things. It's tapping into different genres. And I think that's really kind of what I wanted from Black Widow, was something that was emotional.
Well, and her character is built for that story.
Yes.
Much as a Hawkeye would have been.
Yes.
Rather than an Iron Man or a Thor that is built for the larger stage. Let's really quick, before we forget, let's talk about the family, which her sister, Yelena, played by Florence Pugh,
who is, I have
phenomenal.
to say, she's one of the greatest actresses of our generation, even though she's only done a handful of films.
Right.
Love her.
Rachel Weisz is the mom, and David Harbour from Stranger Things, and I'll mention that other comic book movie he made, is the father, Red Guardian, the Soviet equivalent of Captain America, and who is a super soldier.
Actually,
he is a super soldier.
He is a super soldier, but his treatment is, I mean, and actually
far different
than
different.
His reception. But again, in theory, when you think about communism, is there really space for a communist Captain America? And you begin to realize how culturally that is how backwards that would be for communism. You're supposed to, it's an everybody thing. You're not supposed to.
How can you have an individual that embodies the state?
Yeah.
Whereas Captain America is an individual that embodies the individual can-do spirit of America.
Exactly.
So culturally, you're right. It's two completely different things.
So that's amusing to me. I don't. At first I thought there were bits of it that maybe they were being a little too much of a joke and sort of things, but I think a lot of that actually works, because as we go into territory that these characters are somewhat uncomfortable with, it's only natural that they would turn to a joke, or that they would, or in the father's case, that's kind of who he is. He's
part of probably the reason that he received the treatment that he did.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Well,
He
is not Steve Rogers.
No, not at all.
He is Tony Stark.
But like the failed Tony Stark.
Well, the non-genius Tony Stark.
He's the Tony Stark that
if Howard Stark had become Captain America,
that might,
personality wise, because
but
he admits he's not the brain. He is not the brains of the organization. That is Richard Weisz.
Yes.
Just attitudinally. It would
yes.
But yeah, so and they're going up against the Red Room. Which of course is where the widows are trained, which we learn was destroyed as a result of the Black Widow and Hawkeye's adventures through Budapest. That's a joke in the film, by the way.
Yeah.
Or was it? No, it wasn't. So spoiler alert. So they have to go and they have to solve problems, and the family gets back together. And so they have to go take care of that. Now, this is a nice bit of storytelling that I think actually could have fit anywhere before Civil War. Had they kept, not even if they hadn't kept the grand scale of it. I mean, they could have transplanted this story anywhere to any time period. This could have been between Iron Man 2 and 3.
Sure.
This,
It just,
yeah.
you might need to tweak it a little bit, obviously, but no, it's the bulk of the story could have been told
in any time period.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's kind of crazy to think, we really only had to wait 10 years to get this movie, really.
It's only 10, but it was 22 movies.
Exactly. And
which is why it seems like 22 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where it gets, but I mean, I was clamoring for this film after Iron Man 2.
Right.
I
well, a lot of people were.
Well, I mean, growing up, I wasn't necessarily into the Avengers in the sense that they were like, I love their storylines, or they were kind of the bad guys, because I was an X-Men fan. So
right.
the Avengers were like that cousin that you occasionally get along with, but you really don't agree on anything. So the less you see of them, the better, I guess. But I really loved the character of Black Widow, and I thought that she was about the only really good thing to come out of Iron Man 2, which I thought was kind of meh.
Okay.
But
no, we've mentioned the movie twice now.
Yeah.
Iron Man 2, which is where, of course, she made her Marvel debut. I said that the story could be told anywhere in the MCU, and I'm going to probably catch a lot of shit if people don't really understand what I'm about to say. From a character storytelling standpoint, this is akin to an Iron Man 2 or 3 film. I don't want to discuss the quality of Iron Man 2 and or 3 or your personal opinions about them. I'm saying from a character development standpoint, this is more akin to an Iron Man 2 or 3 than an Avengers film.
Sure. And I don't, and I don't, it's hard to talk about this film because I'm in a lot of ways, I'm thankful that it exists.
Yes.
And so I don't want to be too nitpicky about things and on certain level. But yes, this is a story that adds another layer to the character that informs whatever comes after it. And maybe it should have come earlier and informed some of the things that I don't know. I think obviously I would have preferred to have this film, at least 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, we should have had it 1 year ago.
Yes.
COVID.
But yeah.
However, I also have a thought about that.
All right.
But yeah, we should have probably had this earlier, and we didn't, unfortunately.
And I think they could have done more with it. I think that there's a lot of story that still exists that would have been wonderful that we won't get to see because they waited so long to do this film and they boxed themselves in. And I think that's really unfortunate because I think they could have. There's a lot more material here that they could have dug into, and they do have an out, and there is a way for them to kind of do some of that. But
which we're gonna probably talk some spoilers
we'll
here in a minute.
We'll get to that.
Get, whenever we want to veer, we'll throw that up, and I'll give
but I still think it would have been nice to have this, to have Scarlett Johansson's, Natasha do a lot of these things rather than I really feel like they are going to try to make up.
Yes.
Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll fail. I don't know, but
I don't know.
But it just to me, I think that this movie shows that there were a lot of places that they could have explored that they didn't.
Yep. So where are you overall? Because we're gonna kind of wrap this up, and then we're gonna roll into some unfettered discussion.
Well,
but I want to wrap this part up. Where are you at overall?
About a 7 out of 10, I think. With a caveat that we'll get into in a minute.
I'll go 7.5.
Because
it's good. It's not perfect.
No, but it serves the purpose well enough. And like that, yeah.
Yeah, the you know what I hold against it the most is that the Taskmaster is just a complete disappointment. That character and backstory.
No, I don't disagree. Yeah.
That I was like, that is such a wasted opportunity. And I saw what they did. I saw how they tied it in, and they could have found a different way to tie the character
Sure.
in, and not. It just that is like the biggest minus for me, is that they totally botched the Taskmaster, and I have to grade you down for that. Well, and there's again, a cameo that is suspiciously missing in this. At the end. Now there is another cameo that we're going to talk about in the afterwards here. Yeah. So we're going to wrap this. We're like a 7.5 out of 10 on Black Widow. Definitely see it in theaters.
But here's the thing, and what made me actually feel a little better about the film is sitting down and I started to watch Infinity War.
Yeah.
Just to kind of remind myself of this, this really isn't, the where Black Widow ends. This isn't this film doesn't show the entire, journey. Whereas a lot of times this sort of film would be like, and now she becomes what she was always meant to be.
Right.
And again, that's not this movie. And so there's that part of me that just really had to remind myself that this was, a middle, or I guess it's towards the end, but it's more of a middle story than
without Iron Man 2 and 3, we do not get the Tony Stark of Infinity War and Civil War, or Infinity War and Endgame.
Correct.
So without Black Widow, we do not get the Black Widow of Infinity War and Endgame. So just throwing that out there. That's why I said it's kind of, it's right in there. It's in that milieu of character development. So there we go. That's where we are on Black Widow. But you're definitely agree with me that theater. Over home.
Not there's no question about it.
And IMAX if possible, even though we didn't get to see it. What is it? Like 22 minutes of IMAX footage.
Yeah.
Shot, but I know where it is, so I don't really care. I mean, I could guess where it is, so I'm not really that concerned about it. But if I was going to go pay to see it, I would try to catch it in IMAX and make it really worth my while. So there you go. So that Black Widow, 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10. Check it out in theaters, IMAX if you're a fan. So ready, and we're going to go in
3, 2, 1.
Okay, everyone. Before we go any further in this episode, let me just say right now, if you don't want to hear anything that you don't already know from the commercials or what you may have read online, stop listening now. Come back later, jump to the 24-minute mark, and listen to the next part of this episode. We are not explicitly talking spoilers from this point forward, but we are going to talk more freely than we did in the first part of this episode. So, you have been warned. The countdown is about to begin before we go back to the free form, no holds barred, well, some holds barred, but you get the idea, where we talk about Black Widow, and you might learn stuff you don't want to know. So
3, 2, 1.
Now we are going to talk. We're not going to ruin every story point, but we're going to talk a little freer now, Ryan. Let me start by just saying this film, you touched on it earlier, and I meant to mention this film. This is like the Rogue One of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, well, it is to a certain extent, only with characters that are bigger players.
Right. But it's in the same trap space.
Sure. Yeah, let's drop a film into a little nook and cranny that we haven't filled in yet. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So first, let me start with this comment. The knife drop is starting to get old because now it's in every film. Saw it in Game of Thrones, and it's in every film, and you see it coming now, and it's almost like the Wilhelm scream, and I'm really tired of it. So we need to just do away with it. I'm sure it's a legitimate fighting tactic. Not really a fan. The cameo that I think is missing is at the end. When she leaves, for her stated, "This is what I'm going to go do." There was a perfect opportunity for a final cameo by a certain Avenger that we did not get. And I can't believe that they couldn't pay Chris Evans $12 to show up for 30 seconds to like come off and like wave at her as she's walking toward him at the end. That would have worked for me. And that's actually what I was expecting. So I was kind of disappointed when it didn't happen. Yeah, the Red Room stuff is interesting.
Sure, and I'm glad that they didn't go full Red Sparrow on us.
Right.
Which didn't work, which was the Jennifer Lawrence film that wanted to be a Black Widow film.
But, yeah, right.
But it really wasn't that. I mean, it needs to be addressed. It's something that has to be addressed in this story. The Red Room is the heart of where all this thing comes from, and I think the setup for it is far better than the later stuff. Again, I don't know that it. I don't. Does this? I don't know. Does this? I mean, I guess the problem is you have to tell that story at some point. And when else are you going to be able to do it? And that's kind of my feeling.
Yeah.
On a lot of the Red Room stuff. Whereas you could have probably made at least a slightly better film with that being saved for something else.
Right.
Or that being or that having been explored sometime earlier, or lots of anyway. There's a lot of story here that they're trying to cram in because I think they realize that if we don't tell it now, they're
not going to tell. It's not going to come out, or will it? Which we're going to talk about. But yeah, so the whole Taskmaster subplot just was an epic disappointment. Because it just, again, it was repurposing a character and making them less important or less impactful than they were originally. And that's what annoyed me the most, is that character became less impactful, especially in terms of the Disney Plus universe that we've built, because Taskmaster should be involved with that. And now we're going to get into some spoiler stuff based on the end credit scene,
which I booed, by the way.
You know what? Okay, so that's the other cameo. Direct tie-in to Disney Plus.
Oh, and I hated it.
And it's a backdoor way for them to bring Taskmaster in, even though now that character is not needed to do what Taskmaster did in the original comic run. Do you suspect, as I do, that end credit scene was somehow tacked on in the last year as the Disney Plus series?
I don't know. I mean,
up?
Well,
it feels like they went, you know what we need?
I think that the plan was to introduce her at the end of this and then have her show up again in the Winter Soldier stuff.
Right.
But I hated that the one thing about the Black Widow film that kind of did annoy me is every time it edged on being emotional, it told a joke or blew something up. And here we have what's arguably the one time in the film where we get to have a beautiful moment.
Yep.
And they turn it into, yet again, bad comedy. Or, well, in this case, it's bad comedy. That just felt wrong, entirely wrong to me, partially because, I mean, the whole film is about how these women have been manipulated.
Yes.
And how they have been, and how the movie is about them freeing themselves from manipulation and, finding freedom and being able to make their own decisions without, external, influence or whatever. And yet, what is the post-credit scene?
Manipulation.
Manipulation. And it's just like,
again, we now basically know what's going to happen in an upcoming Disney Plus series.
And I hate what they're doing.
Yes.
I hate it because, again, spoilers here, folks. This is going into Hawkeye, and they are setting Hawkeye up to be, she's chasing him as if he's really responsible for her death, essentially.
Yeah.
So basically, sister hunting down best friend of dead sister because she doesn't understand what was, it's
because
again,
she's being manipulated.
She's being manipulated into thinking Hawkeye's the bad guy, and the response would be, well, she's got to decide that she wants to be Black Widow, and somehow that the Hawkeye series is she's going to figure that out. And it's
all of that went through my head, and I still don't care.
And I said, well, why couldn't she decide to do that at the end of this film?
Right?
Why can't she say, you know what? I mean, to me, that's a stronger ending, is if she leaves the grave of her sister, deciding that she is going to pick up the mantle. Keeping in mind that there has been stuff that's happened. There's 5
years of material.
Years. There's stuff that's happened in between. So we don't know what journey she has gone on. And to me, well, then why don't you show that in the Hawkeye series?
Well, and we don't know if she was snapped.
Yeah, well, good point.
If she was snapped, then she doesn't have 5 years.
Yeah.
Which we could assume.
Anyway,
I would assume that she was snapped, which means she just gets to come back and be told what she's told. But it feels like that relationship that we have at the end of the film that we're shown that we hate is longer than a little bit.
No, it feels like they've been working together for years.
Right, exactly. For I don't know, 5 years.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work for me.
And I hate it because that conflicts with the ending of the actual movie.
Yes.
Which has, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it feels like it. That's why I said it feels like it was tacked on simply to tie back into Disney Plus.
And maybe it was.
So it would not surprise me that if we get some digging done, that is the case. Is that scene was maybe not tacked on in the last 4 or 5 months, but
wasn't part of the original script.
It wasn't part of the original script. Yeah.
And I don't think that it was. And
see, now where I thought they were going to go, I thought we were going to get a whistle at the end, and I didn't want it, but I have since thought of a way it would work. It would have been the memory of a whistle and a smile and a walk away. And then of course she picks up the thing. Had it been a real whistle, like she hears a whistle and she looks up and looks around, that would have been disingenuous.
Well,
but they managed to have a worse ending than that.
Yes.
Or a worse post-credit scene than that. This movie is far better without that end scene. Yeah. I would tell people not to watch it because it's going to get regurgitated on Disney Plus anyway. You're going to see it on Disney Plus at probably sometime during the Hawkeye series. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays in. But yeah, I was not thrilled with that particular aspect.
I thought it was the sloppiest, ugliest, like it made me hate the movie
Well, like
for
the shawarma scene in Avengers, pointless, no dialogue, there was nothing there, but it absolutely made sense in terms of what they did with it. Whereas this completely, you're right, it kind of counteracts everything that went before. So it's a pointless scene. It's not, there's comedy in it, but it's not supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work. I mean, if I could tell them now, I would say cut that scene off
Entirely.
Release it wide.
And not only that, because then suddenly the time jump. We have a nice story that if you sit down and you can go and you can watch the movies and it fits right in, and now you have this post-credit scene. I mean, and I know this sounds stupid, but so do I eject or stop and then go and paste that onto the, do I now watch it after? It's like you skip that big time. I don't know. Why do we need that?
We don't. We 100% did not need the post-credit scene. And it is a post-credit scene. It is all the way at the end. If you're still listening to this and you still want to watch it, it is all the way at the end.
There is a mid-credit scene.
Yeah.
That I don't think is necessary either, which you've talked about, but that one at least fits into
the timeline.
It right. So
stay for the mid-credit and be sad that we don't get a cameo there. And then leave. Leave when Black Widow leaves. And there's no value added to that post-credit scene.
Yeah. It hurts. And the thing that it bothers me is I didn't like what they were doing at the end of Falcon Winter Soldier, and this feels like it ties directly in. Yeah, I mean, this is it has me really worried about what
Phase
Marvel
4 is going to be
is going to do, because I really didn't like how they handled the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I absolutely hate the way they handled this. And I wrote in my review that Marvel is smart enough that maybe they have a plan where all of this ultimately will make sense, or things will get better and I will simply forgive them for for these little things. But
I don't know, man.
I mean, I
really did not like that scene.
I hated it.
It is zero value added. Zero value added. And it might actually remove value. And that's not what those end credits scenes should be. They should not be a detriment. I honestly hope they cut it off. And so people that like if we go see it again in the theater and go, hey, that scene's gone. I would love for that to happen.
Yeah.
But or at least lop off the very end of that. And at least then it's not as bad.
No. Well, that's the thing. It's a moment that, I mean, I don't want to turn this into like a gender thing, but can you imagine if at the funeral for Tony Stark, or that they pulled that kind of bullshit? I mean, seriously, people would riot. They'd be like, wow, that's disrespectful. And that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I look at it and it's just like, really?
Yeah, it's disrespectful to the Black Widow film that we just watched to do that at the end. I mean, sure, at Tony Stark's funeral at the end of Endgame, if they had, I don't know, somehow tried to blame Spider-Man or something.
It just,
what? I just wouldn't have made any sense.
Well, and it feels, again, it feels like a very generic comic book decision. And I think that a lot of the Marvel films have transcended their they've moved away. They've included what's great about comics, but they've also tried to stray into a little smarter territory.
Right.
There are obviously moments that we could all point to where that didn't work or that didn't happen so well, but
right,
man, it just feels like
that's not the taste I wanted left in my mouth.
No.
When this was over. So yeah, so there you go. That's it. Now we liked the movie, but not the end credit scene. So watch the movie. Like I said, leave when Natasha leaves. Just get up and say, I really enjoyed that, and then go about your business and just pretend nothing happens once the credits roll, the hard credits roll. So sorry everyone, that's Ryan agreed with me a little more vehemently on that than I had anticipated, because he made a bad word, and normally that's my turf.
But no, I'm honestly, I hated it.
No, it's not good. It's not a good scene at all. It is just it's nonsensical. It's just not good. It's just not shitty. It's just a shitty scene. There's my bad word. It's a shitty scene.
No, but the other thing we're pointing out is obviously they're setting up.
Definitely setting up Hawkeye. Yeah.
Well, setting up Hawkeye, and they're also setting up the fact that the Black Widow will live on. In a family member, and which is very, again, comic book, and we all saw that coming from a million miles away. I mean, there's why else do you cast one of the most talented people in up and coming talent in the industry unless you're going to use her for 3 films,
2 or 3
4
more
films,
movies,
6, whatever. But and to that end, great. I'm happy, but I am kind of pissed off that.
We had to put up with that scene to get there.
Well, it's not just that scene, but it's just that for it was almost like we were asking for a Black Widow film, and they were like, we don't know where that fits. I don't really. Yeah. And then suddenly, Wonder Woman comes out and does fantastic business,
and rightfully so.
And everybody goes, "Oh, wait a minute,
right?
Maybe we should."
Well. To be fair, remember the only reason the only reason we got Wonder Woman is because we got a talking raccoon.
Yeah.
Which proved that yes, you could open a film with any superhero effectively as long as it's well done. Then we got Wonder Woman, and then they went, oh, we can open it with a female superhero, and then they decided they were going to give us Black Widow, and they gave us, it was good, and they fucked it up.
Yeah, I know.
So there you go. That's it. We're done. We're done talking about Black Widow. Go see it in the theaters. Leave when Natasha leaves. That's it. Let me give my creepy Biden voice. Leave when Natasha leaves. So, okay, that's it. We're done. We're done with that. We do have a couple other movies to talk about soon. One starring another superhero, Christopher Q. Pratt. I don't think that's his real middle initial, but that's what I'm going to go with. Called The Tomorrow War, and we'll be talking about that, which is coming out on Amazon. So come back for that, and we will be talking to everyone soon. But until we do, I am Mark. That is Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
And we'll talk to you all later.